Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Foundations Church. We're delighted that you're with us. If you're visiting with us, welcome. If you've been with us for a long time, welcome. We're in a series called The Grace Immersion, so there's a lot of stuff going on around our series. If you don't have a book, grab one on the way out. We want everyone to have our Grace Immersion book. It kind of follows along for 50 days, what we're doing in the Grace Immersion. And this is our third weekend, and we have small groups, life groups meeting all across the region here. And there's still time to plug into one. So if you say, hey, I want to get into a small group and talk about this grace stuff, definitely plug in. We are really, really glad that you're here. Did you hear about this guy? His barn burned down. And Larry's barn burned down, and he lost his barn. And so he told his wife to call the insurance company and check it out. And so she called the insurance company. She says, hey, my barn we had our barn insured for $50,000 and it burned down. So could you please send me my check for $50,000? And the guy on the phone says, whoa, man, the insurance doesn't work that way. She goes, what do you mean? He says, well, we kind of value, we kind of discern how much the barn was worth at the time it was burned down. And then we'll replace it with a barn the same value of the time that you lost your old barn. And she was very silent on the phone. And he says, oh, well then, if that's the case, can I cancel the insurance policy I have on my husband? Think about that one for a while. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Well, today we're talking about canceling. We're going to do battle today. We're going to cancel the insurance policy called religion, and we're going to replace it with something of infinite more value. And it's talk about a walk of grace. Today we're going to talk about fighting for grace. And I'm really, really glad you're here this morning. We're going to stand in just a second, and we're going to say the statement that we've been saying every week in the Grace Series, kind of a commitment that we're trying to make to be people of grace. And before I do that, I just want to tell you one thing. If you follow the news, Loveland has a school that's been in national news this week, if you've been following it. Mary Blair has been in a lot of controversy this week. I know some people at Mary Blair, and I know some teachers, a little bit of the administration. And I know there's been information, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. Foundations Church is a church that wants to embrace the community we live in. Northern Colorado. We want to embrace it. So I don't know all the stuff that's gone on. I know that some of the stuff that's been in national media isn't the whole story, but I don't know what's true or not true. All I want to say is we at Foundations Church believe that God is a God of reconciliation, and we're going to just stand by the administration and teachers of Mary Blair and support them. We're going to stand by the students and the parents of Mary Blair, and we're going to support them. And I know there's been some very, very nasty threats been delivered at the school. We don't believe that's good. And we just, as a church, we want to stand and say, may peace and harmony prevail. Does that make sense? That's what we want to do. It's easy to throw stones and cast things, and people make mistakes, and misinformation gets out there, and all this vitriol starts taking place. And we want to say, no, we want to be we want Northern Colorado to be a civil place. We want it to be a civil place. And while there's all kinds of stuff out there, we're going to pray that God's grace will prevail in Mary Blair. Administration, teachers, students, parents, the whole shebang. Are you guys all okay with that? That's what we want to do as a church. We want to embrace and stand around those people and just say, we want to do all we can to support them. So let's all stand together. Here's the commitment we're making as a group of people for the next 7 weeks. Let's read this out loud together. Everyone, here we go. With God's help, I commit to grow in grace and impact my world with the grace of Jesus, motivated by his love, one person at a time. Father, we thank you so much today for your incredible, amazing, lavish, awesome grace that you poured down upon your people. Give us the faith to embrace that grace. Just because you give it, we have to receive it. And I pray today that our hearts would be opened by faith to receive the grace that you want to pour on all of your people. Thank you that we're here today. We lift up Mary Blair. A lot of stuff going on there. Father, we pray for your peace and harmony to prevail. We thank you for the many, many people at that school who are dedicated day in, day out to serving the kids of that school. So we pray for administration, teachers, students, parents, all involved, that your peace would prevail, bring harmony to that place so that the work of Mary Blair could go on unabated. Thank you for this time that we have here together. Today we're going to talk about fighting for grace. It's kind of a weird concept. Teach us, Father, to be able to embrace the truth that you want us to embrace. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And before you grab a seat, say hi to me. Hi. Oh, I just feel so affirmed here, okay? All right? And then shake the hands of 3 people and say, the next one is better. Just tell them that. Just tell them that. Hey, David, I'm calling you this week. You're on my list. No, I am going. My friend, you could grab a seat now. My friend, who now has just moved into the category of ex-friend, came up here and shook my hand. He says, does that mean the next pastor is better? Yeah. Yeah, my next friend is better too. Yeah. Oh, that's good. This was in national news. A child in California got abducted. A guy drove by in his truck and said to an 8-year-old girl, hey, come here. And she got into his truck and he abducted her. And so that night in Fresno, they put on an Amber Alert. And a guy saw that. It was kind of in his neighborhood. Wow. When he got up the next morning, he turned on TV to see if they rescued the girl. Found out they didn't rescue the girl. She was still missing. And as he was watching on TV about this abduction, they described the truck that the little girl got in. And as he was watching the news, he looked out his window, and that truck that they were describing on the news drove by his house. Victor Perez hopped in his truck and ran the guy down, caught up with him. They interviewed him on the news. Here's what Victor Perez had to say. Watch this.
First, I didn't know if it was him or not, but when he took off on me, I kept up with him. I cut him up 3 times, so I caught up with him here. And I told him, that ain't your little girl, man. I was yelling, but I kept cutting him off so he'll get off the road. At first, it was just like a simple question, I need to talk to you. And he goes, no, my truck's messing up, I need to leave. So I said, okay. I didn't see no little girl till the second time I cut him off, and the little girl stuck her head out. And that's when I said, oh, okay, that ain't your girl right there. Because he was hiding her, like right here, like pushing her down. Well, I thank God that he put me here to help out that little girl, that's for sure. And I got kids out there and nephews and nieces, and I wouldn't want nobody to do this to my family and vice versa, you know, to help out everybody. I don't know that people, but they're on the same neighborhood where I'm from, so I'm glad that God put me here.
Yeah, that's cool, isn't it? Yeah, Victor Perez is a hero, man. I want to be that guy. He hopped in his truck and he cut the dude off so the guy couldn't get anywhere. And the guy kind of said, hey, I got some problems with my truck. And he went around Victor. Victor cut him off a second time, cut him off a third time. Finally, the girl popped her head out. So Victor cut him off so he couldn't go anywhere. And the guy says, let me go. And Victor says, I ain't letting you go. And he pushed the girl out the door. And Victor got out of his truck, put the girl in, and then the guy took off, and Victor had the police chase the guy down, and they caught the dude. And Victor was, he saved that, got that little, he brought her in her truck, and the little girl was scared, and he says, you don't have to be scared now, you're okay. I'm going to get you to your mom and dad. So that's kind of cool, isn't it? This guy, this abductor, put that girl's life in jeopardy, and old Victor Perez, he came to the rescue. I like that. I like that. You know, many, many, many years ago, the Apostle Paul went to this area called Galatia. I'll show you a picture of it on the map here. Here's Galatia. It's in modern day, we'll keep it up there just for a second. That's modern day Turkey. But Galatia is the home of the Gauls. Galatia. Y'all with me? Galatia. What does that have to do with us? Well, Gauls are people who have this ancestry: French, British, Irish, or Scottish descent. Anybody here from French, British, Irish, or Scottish descent? Let me see your hand. Yeah, those are your people right there. You're a Gaul. You didn't even know it, okay, all right? And Paul went there. These were pagans. These Galatians were, as I saw your hands, those people are nasty people back then, okay? All right? They were Gauls and they were pagan people worshiping all kinds of different gods. And Paul went there and gave the gospel of grace to them, and they embraced it in big numbers right there. They're the first Europeans. They're the first Europeans to accept the gospel. Well, right after Paul went there, a group, because prior to that, Christianity was just basically a Jewish sect. After Paul went there, Jewish people came after Paul and said, don't believe what Paul is telling you. They had the gall to say that. I worked on that line myself. They says, Paul has a lot of gall. And they says, Paul just talked to you about Jesus. That's just elementary school. We're going to take you to college now. And they started adding stuff to Paul. They says, you know what? If you become what Paul says, if you embrace this Jesus, then you can't eat ham and cheese sandwiches. They go, we like it. No. Oh no, you can't eat ham. Bible says don't eat ham. Can't eat ham. And if you're a man, you have to get circumcised. Paul didn't tell us that. Oh yeah. Paul was just giving the elementary stuff. But we're giving you the deep stuff now. You want to go deeper? Follow us. And you know what? Why are you cutting your grass on Saturday? You can't be doing that. The Bible says the seventh day you keep it holy. Paul never talked to it. Yeah, I know. We're taking you deeper now. And you better give 10%. Paul never talked about it. Paul says that we should give as God blesses us. Oh, no, I know. We're taking you deeper now. The Bible says here that you better give 10%. And so they says, here's Jesus plus stuff. Are you with me? They were abducting Christianity from the Gauls. Paul didn't have a truck to get in to rescue the abductors. So he took the only weapon he had, and that was his pen. And he quickly wrote his first book, the book of Galatians. He says, hey, I want to write this book to you because people are hijacking you. They're stealing stuff from you, and you need to understand the truth of grace. And so he wrote the book of Galatians, and you could look in your notes, we'll put some stuff up there, but look at this. Paul says this in Galatians. He says this, I'm astonished. I'm shocked that you are so quickly deserting the one who called you by the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel, which is really no gospel. We'll keep that up there for a second. Which is really no gospel at all. Now, there's some smart people in the room, okay? They're not the Gauls. They're the other ones, German ancestry, that kind. Those people are smart, okay? But gospel, what does gospel mean? Good news. Here's what Paul's saying. When you start adding stuff to Jesus, it doesn't become good news at all. You don't have any good news. You start doing stuff and performing. It's no good news at all. Then he writes this, watch this. Evidently, he says, some people are throwing you into confusion and trying to pervert the gospel, pervert the good news. That word pervert in Greek is metamorphosis, which means what? They're morphing the gospel, is what they're saying. Paul's saying they're morphing the gospel. They're changing it. And it's not good news anymore. Paul will write this. He says this, are you so foolish after beginning with the Spirit? Are you now trying to attain your goal by human effort? You're working. You work, you don't have to. You just have to live in grace. And then he says this, the fourth one, he says, it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. It's for freedom. Stand firm then, and don't let yourselves be burdened by a yoke of slavery. Don't get burdened by this stuff. Accept the grace. Go back to the simple message of grace, and don't let those people abduct you and take away your freedom and your joy and morph the good news so it won't be good news at all. I have on your, if you go to the other part of this, of the notes on the right-hand side or no, flipped over on your side, I have a little map there. I'm going to do this real quickly. This is what I call spiritual quicksand. You all see the map? If you do, say, I do. Okay, here it is. It's what they call pre-conversion. Pre-conversion is before people find grace. If you don't have grace, then you try to live life out of your own efforts. You try to find happiness yourself. You try to find joy yourself. You try to do all that. And then all of a sudden, some of us here are converted. We found grace. I found grace when I was 17 years old. It's like, wow, I can't believe it. God accepts me as I am. That's awesome. It's amazing. It's great. And I had this amazing, some of you can relate to this. When I first found grace, I had this amazing joy in my life. It was profound. It was just really profound. And then I went to this thing after conversion, go down. It's called post-conversion, light legalism. I went away to college and people would say this, wow, if you're a Christian, you shouldn't be listening to that kind of music. And I remember on my college campus, this is back in the 70s, this is the ancient times, where they had records. You guys know what records are? Do you know what records are? Some people don't know. I feel bad for you, okay? They had on campus, they had record burning parties. And people were taking their Beatle albums. That hurts, doesn't it? Rolling Stones. Led Zeppelin, are you serious? Okay, and throwing it on the fire, okay? And then there was a church not far from campus. Seriously, when people would come and receive God, Christ, they had behind the stage, kid you not, they had a barber chair. Because a lot of us in the 70s, it's hard to picture this on me, okay, all right? It's not funny. See, this is why you guys need to learn some grace. This isn't funny. I had this long hair, and they says, if you're going to be a grace follower, you need to get a haircut. And now some of these people say, wow, I'm serious. And so we got into start working. You know what I'm saying? Well, I got to work. And that's called light conversion, attempt to be good. I adopt some practices. And then after a while, those practices don't bring joy. Are you all tracking with me? And so then what you do is you up the ante. Double down a little bit and work harder. That's called heavy legalism. And you say, well, if I just work harder, I'll discover this joy. And then after that, there comes a fork in the road. I'll take the first one straight down. The people who stay in church, those who stay, they become busy. They become busy Christians. I put in your notes, they substitute accomplishments for real joy. I'm working hard because I want God to approve me, okay? Or they become dry Christians. Substituting ritual for joy. That was a church I was raised in, and we had a lot of ritual in the church I was raised in. But man, I didn't see much joy. It reminds me of Jesus' words, who said, your lips worship me, but your heart is far from me, far from me. Or they become, number 3, they become grim Christians. You know what I'm talking about? Walking around like they've been baptized in pickle juice. Just... I'm not happy. I'm making sure no one else is, okay? All right? Grim Christians. And those are the people who stay in the church. Just look around, okay? All right? I'm getting carried away, aren't I? Okay, all right? Settle down, Carl. Or they take the other path. Many people. I know many people. Many of my friends, very sad to say, who I walked with in my 20s and 30s, and our faith was the most important thing. Many of them. Shocked at how many of them have a lot of them have left the church, but many of them have left the faith. How could you, wow, yeah. And here's what they'll say, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And what they do is they throw out God, but really what they don't understand is religion doesn't work. And they're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Are you all with me this morning? And there's no joy, and they say, God doesn't work, forget it. So back to the other page, I want to give you the biggest enemy of grace. The biggest enemy of grace is legalism. taking Jesus plus stuff. Y'all with me? Jesus plus not eating ham sandwiches, plus not working on the Sabbath day, plus my 10%, plus reading the Bible, all this stuff, all this stuff, Jesus plus. And I'm not saying any of that stuff is bad. I'm saying any of that stuff is bad. But when we start adding other stuff to grace, we fall into legalism. Here's the definition of legalism. It's right underneath it. It's this. It's adding man-made rules or expectations to the gospel, complicating the simple message of grace. So in the remainder of my time, I want to talk about 5 deadly results, because what's happening is some people are being abducted by legalism, and we can't stand back and let that happen. We got to be like Victor Perez. Get in our truck, cut him off, and say, hey, it's all about the grace of Jesus and living in his grace, not living under rules. So today we're going to talk about 5 results of legalism. If you're ready to go, say, I'm ready. Here we go. Number one, it drains you of joy. It drains you of joy. When you live under legalism, trying to perform to get God to like you, it just drains you of joy. Here's what Paul says. He says, to the Galatians, he says, what happened to all your joy? Man, when I was with you, you guys were happy. You didn't have to sacrifice to all those pagan gods. You weren't going through all these ritualistic hoops. You just embraced the grace of God. What happened to all your joy? Then he says this, a little yeast works through the whole bunch of dough. Here's what he's saying. He's saying, if you put Jesus plus anything, even if it's one thing, a little yeast will affect the whole grace package. Are y'all tracking with me today? Just a little bit will sap you of your joy. I know I read this article about this guy who his friend, because this guy has little kids. So his friend says, oh, you know what your kids need? Your kids need fish. So he gave him a fish bowl. Gave it to him for free. So the guy went to the fish store, pet store, whatever. He said, I want some goldfish. And the goldfish were 99 cents each. And next to the goldfish were the neon fish. You've seen the neon fish? He goes, well, how much are those? He goes, $2 each. He goes, wow, I'll take 2. No 4. No 6. I'll take 6. And so he bought 6, and so he was checking out, and the person at the counter says, well, since you're adding more fish to your tank, you're going to have to turn up the air volume in your tank. He goes, well, how do I do that? He goes, your bubbler. I don't know what a bubbler. He goes, oh, yeah, I got a bubbler here for $12.50. Okay, $12.50. Give me the bubbler. How do I do the bubbler? Just stick it. No. The bubbler goes through the air rocks, through the rocks. I don't know anything about air rocks. Oh, yeah, I got air rocks here for $5. But then that has to go through your regulator. I don't know about a regulator. I'll say a regulator for $4.95. He goes, but you have to run that through your filter. He goes, I don't know anything about a filter. $17. I got one here. And you got to use charcoal. Charcoal's $4. And you need a water purifier for $3, a heater for $13, a thermometer for $4, a light for $5. The guy who got a free fish bowl, he walked out of the fish store with a bill of $120. That's how legalism is. A little, then you need more, then you need more, then you need more. And then the guy said, a month later, he went out to check on the fish, and how many people have had dead fish like that? Yeah, don't get fish for your kids. I've tried that, okay? They're all dead. They all die anyway, and the guy's $120 cheaper, out of the pocket. Doesn't work. That's what happens with legalism. You do a little bit, and then you need a little bit more. A little bit, then a little bit more. A little bit more, and then you're dead. And there's no joy. Number two, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Look what Paul says to the Galatians here. Look at this verse. I do not set aside the grace of God. Now watch this verse. For if righteousness could be gained through the Christ did, you can't get righteous or approval from God. You can't be good by trying to obey the Bible. Y'all with me today? You can't. Otherwise, you nullify what Jesus Christ has done. Now, I'm going to read this verse. I wish I had it up there. But I don't. This is from Romans chapter 17. Now, listen to this. Romans 7. There is no Romans 17. 7, okay? He says this. Now, my dear brothers and sisters. Who's that? You guys, okay? This is the point. You died to the power of the law when you died with Christ. You died to the law. And now you are united with the one who has been raised from the dead. As a result, now you can produce a harvest of good deeds for God. Not living under the law, but living under grace. Are y'all tracking with me? Now watch this. Here's this. Oh, this is good. This is good. When we were controlled by our old nature, the sinful desires at work within us. How many people have had sinful desires? You know what I'm talking about? I've had some this morning, okay? Like something happening bad to you, okay, all right? Okay. Okay? When you have these desires, now watch this. These desires, now watch this. These desires that are at work within us, the law aroused these evil desires that produced a harvest of sinful deeds resulting in death, but now we have been released from the law. You got to get what he's saying. He's saying the law, the purpose of the law is to arouse your sinful desires. You all with me? We could talk a lot about that today, but we don't have time. But the law was given to show us how bad we are, so that we will reach out for a Savior. Because if I think I could save myself, I'm not going to reach out for a Savior. The law, what the law does, when you put people under the law, what it does is it just gives more power to their sinful desires. Isn't that crazy? That's how it works. There's something about us, human beings, that when you put us under rules and regulations, there's something in us that wants to break them. This is the Flagship Hotel, right here. A couple of years ago, I think God was punishing me for my sins, and so I had to go to Galveston, Texas. This is the Flagship Hotel in Galveston, Texas. It's built on a pier. You'll see it right there. They tore it down a year or two ago because they're putting an amusement park there. But I seen the Flagship Hotel. Now, underneath that red awning, there's windows from the floor to the ceiling. See those windows? That's a restaurant. It's a restaurant. They had tons of problems in the Flagship Hotel at the restaurant because what people were doing on the balconies. They were taking their fishing poles and casting it out into the water. They had sinkers on them. And a lot of times they couldn't cast very far. They were like wusses, just, okay? The fish line would hit the red awning. The sinker would come through and bust the windows of the people who were eating at the Flagship Hotel restaurant. We sit there, bam! It's like, wow, what was that? It was a sinker. They had all kinds of problems with those windows busting. They couldn't get people to stop casting their fishing poles from the balcony. Finally, they called in a consultant and they solved the problem. You know how they got people to stop casting their rods from the balcony? They removed a sign from the balcony that says, "No fishing from the balcony." True story. Most people didn't have the idea until they saw the sign. No fish. Whoa, that's a cool thing. I bet I could hit the water from here. And they were shattering all those windows down there. And the only way they could get people to stop doing it was take the law away. Once the law was taken away, they didn't have the idea. I want to tell you something. Grace lifts us above the requirements of the law because the law doesn't work. Number 3, it leads to slavery and bondage. It leads to slavery and to bondage. It says this, I'm going to just spend just a second with this. It leads to slavery, but now Paul's writing this to what people? The Gauls, who prior to becoming recipients of grace were pagans. Watch this. Watch this first. Okay? Watch this. Formerly, he's talking to them. Formerly, they were pagans. Okay? Stay with me. It's the early service. I have to speak down a little bit at the 9 o'clock service. But formerly, when you did not know God, they were pagans. You were slaves to those who by nature are not gods. So every time their crop wouldn't grow, they would sacrifice something to the rain god or to the sun god. Or if they needed protection, this is to the protection god, to the warrior god. They were slaves with all these ritual rabbit foot gods they were doing. Oh, I need a parking spot at Walmart. Give me a parking spot. And, there were all these gods, okay? You were slaves to that. But now that you know God, they received what? or rather are known by God, how is it that you are turning back to those weak and miserable principles? Do you wish to be enslaved by them all over again? Here's what Paul is saying. We'll keep that just for a second. Paul's saying you received grace before you were pagan, doing all this crazy ritualistic pagan stuff to try to get the gods to be pleased with you. Now you receive grace, and after Paul came, the hijackers came in and started teaching them the elementary, turning back to the principles. What principles they were going back to were principles in the Bible. Are y'all tracking with me? They went back and said, hey, Paul was just teaching you Christianity 101. But now, let me tell you how it really works. And they were teaching them stuff that even to some degree the Bible supported, but they were principles that enslaved people. It's possible to be enslaved by stuff from the Bible. Are y'all tracking with me this morning? Okay, so when I became a Christian, and I said one time to a guy that my prayers weren't, God's not hearing my prayers. Everything's going bad. I asked for a girlfriend and I get, never mind. And he says, oh, because how do you pray? And I told him how I pray. He says, oh, you have to kneel. What? You have to kneel when you pray. So I said, okay. So I'd get up in the morning and I would kneel down and I would pray. I'd pray all my prayers kneeling. Now, I don't think anything's wrong with kneeling. I still do. Not all the time, because I'm in my car a lot when I pray. But in my office, I do. I go in my office and there's a chair there and I'll pray for you guys. The 9 o'clock service, Lord, they need some help, okay? And I pray. And then one other guy told me years later, he says, God answers prayers best when you pray out loud. What? Oh yeah, you got to pray out loud. So I started praying out loud. And I started doing a lot of ritual stuff. Not bad. Are y'all all tracking with me? It's not bad stuff. But one more hoop to jump through to get God to like me a little bit more, make my prayers a little more powerful, or make my actions a little more meaningful to God. and what it does is it leads to slavery. It leads to legalism. You're wrapped up into all this stuff. You're wrapped up into it. And they just keep adding stuff. I read a year ago, you read this, it was in the news. There's things people do in the Bible to try to show that God is bigger. And God is big. He doesn't need to prove himself. But I read this story about this guy in West Virginia. He's a pastor. And they were passing around in their church snakes. We won't do that here, okay, all right? And he grabbed a rattlesnake and got bit. He got bit by the snake. Now, poison started going through his body. The solution to the problem was less than a mile down the road. Less than a mile down the road. The elders in the church says, come on, let's go. And he says, no, I'm not going to go. I'm going to show you that God's going to heal me. I'm going to show you. And the answer was just, God was going to heal him a mile down the road. And he didn't go. And he died. He was in his 40s. And when I read that, I said, wow, that's, because what was sad to me is he had little boys. And so now those little boys are going to be raised without a dad. And dad didn't have to die. And I kept reading the story, and here's what was just made me fuming angry at legalism, is this guy who died, his dad was a preacher. His dad was. And his dad died when this guy was a little boy. This guy was raised without a dad because his dad died. Does anybody want to guess how his dad died? Bitten by a snake. A rattlesnake. And he didn't go and get help, and he could have. And it's like, wow, legalism is visiting that family to the second and to the third and it's crazy. Someone's got to get in their pickup truck and stop that stuff. Say, get out! You're raising boys and girls without a dad, and that doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen. You become slaves. You become slaves. Number four, oh boy, I wish I had time. I don't have time. Ohio State's playing basketball this afternoon. Number four, they're playing the number one team in the country. Are you watching? Are you, Paul? Okay, good. I wasn't asking you. I was asking my Ohio State friend. Okay, number four, it promotes controlling leaders. Now, here's what I see. Now, this is just exception. It's not the rule. I just want to show you this. Exception, not the rule. It's the exception, not the. So I went to college, and I got really involved in grace, and then I started getting involved in legalism, doing stuff, getting up real early in the morning, doing all kinds of stuff. Some of my friends would go on 40-day fasts, and all that's good. I just got off a fast myself. I mean, you can't tell, but I just did. Okay, so I don't think any of that's bad. And we'll talk about that. We're going to spend 2 weeks on grace. Doesn't mean just laying back and saying, whatever, God, whatever. We'll spend 2 weeks. That's not what grace is. Okay, so we'll talk about discipline. We'll talk about all that stuff, okay? But I got into it, and so I had a group of people. We were disciplined, man. And some of us were very legalistic. Here's what happens. Sometimes it's the exception, not the rule. Some of these guys wanted God to really please them, and so they became more extreme in their sacrifices. Are y'all tracking? And then what they did is now I'm really going to please God, and so now I'm going to study to go into ministry. And I went to school with some of them and was involved in some of that stuff. But when you're motivated by guilt and you become a leader, you know how you motivate people? By guilt. Are you all with me? A lot of my time is spent with people who have been abused by religious leaders or religious organizations. You all with me? That put pressure on people. Put pressure on people. Motivate. We're going to motivate. You better give 10% to God, or you are going to be punished. Can you believe how wealthy you are? All that. I mean, I could lay it on. You guys will feel guilty pretty soon. It's just, and here's what Paul says. Watch this. We'll put it up here. Galatians 4:17. He says, those people are zealous to win you over, but for no good. What they want is to alienate you from us so that you may be zealous for. Yeah. Here's what I want you to know. Foundations Church is a church founded on grace. I talked about that last week. I couldn't stand up here if it wasn't for the grace of God. I've had some people tell me, and I get they're saying, they're not really saying this, I don't think, but I just want to make sure they're not. I've had some people tell me, hey, Carl, when you came over to Foundations Church, we just followed you over to Foundations. I want to say, don't you ever follow me. Don't you ever follow me. Because I'm messed up. All I am is a signpost. So you know when you ride Trail Ridge Road, and it says big curve, bitter turn or you'll be dead, okay? You don't keep your eye on the sign, because you'll go over, I'm dead, okay? You don't, look at that slick sign. Wow, that's cool. We're dead, okay? That sign is to keep you on the path. All I'm trying to be in my life is a sign. And I'm pretty old and rusty. But just say, you better follow grace. Don't follow me. Don't do something because Carl said it. Check it out in the Bible. Check it out to be sure God is telling you that. And don't follow me. Because I've met many people in religious positions who get people to follow them. And don't you follow a human being, it will end up in destruction. It's all about the grace of God. And then we got to close. Number 5. It distorts the gospel of grace. It distorts what the real gospel is, the good news. It distorts the gospel. Here's what Paul says in Galatians 5:4. It says this to the Gauls. You're trying to be justified by the law. You're trying to be good. You're working hard at trying to be good. And you've been alienated from Christ. You have fallen away from grace. When you try to work to get God to be happy with you, you fall away from grace. I had my grandkids with me this week. And so Thursday came and I had to take them to the airport. So they hopped in my car. When I go to DIA, I don't take C470 because I'm cheap. So I get off at Route 7, just north of Thornton, and then I go the back way. And if you go there at the right time, if you get off at Route 7, when you go up to the ramp, there's a red light there. If you go there during the right time, there's always a homeless person there. And so what I do is the money that I would typically spend on those tolls is I give to that homeless guy right there. So I pulled up to the stop sign, to the red light, it was red, and I rolled down my window. Wait, let me rephrase that. I have a new car. I pushed the button and the window went down. It is the coolest thing. I just sit in my garage. My wife goes, get a life. I go, look at this, man. This is cool. Never mind. All right. So I push the window down, And before I said anything, the guy says, God bless you, sir. I didn't even give him anything. God bless you, sir. I says, well, God bless you too. I says, and here's a gift. This is from the grace of God, not from me. This is God's grace. And then I pulled up the window, and then off we went. And my granddaughter sitting in the back says, Grandpa, did you give that money to that poor person? I go, yes, I did. She goes, why did you have to do that? I says, hey, Naomi, I didn't have to. I get to. I get to. See, he might be happy because I gave him a little money, but I'm happy that I get to do that for him. I get to. And then I spent the next 10 or 15 minutes talking about get to versus have to. Y'all with me? If you are living with have tos in your life, you are living under the bondage of legalism. Because you know what? You don't have to do much in life. You get to. I get to come to work. I don't have to. Are y'all with me? I get to. The other night, it was time for the kids to go to bed, and my wife says, why don't you read to the boys? A ball game is on, that's why. But I don't have to read to the boys. I get to. Y'all with me? You could eliminate almost everything. You don't have to do much. Paul was so caught up in grace. I don't even get this. I'm nowhere near where Paul was. When he got tortured for Christ, because they told him, shut up, and he wouldn't shut up with the grace message, they says, we're going to torture you. And Paul says, oh my gosh, thanks be to God. I get to suffer. I get to suffer. Paul was so caught up in grace, he didn't even think he had to die. He got to die. Are you with me? I mean, I'm not there yet. I'm trying. But he says, man, I get to. I get to leave and be with God. Wow, I get to do that. It's awesome. You don't have tos. You may, but if you have have tos, you're living under the tyranny of your own legalism. You get to. And I gave my grandkids about a 15-minute talk about get to and have to. And then I finished my little talk, and it was silent for about 10 seconds. And then Naomi says, Grandpa, can we get ice cream? I go, you're just like my church people. I'm sharing wisdom, and all you care about is ice cream right now. Are you serious? Oh, my gosh. I was just saying, this is wisdom from Grandpa. Do you think I have an anger problem, by the way? So, come on. So we got to the airport, and I said, wow, we had breakfast a couple hours ago. You got a 2-hour flight to Chicago. So here's what I'm going to do. We went to McDonald's, and I got them their Happy Meals, and we're sitting there talking and laughing. They finished their Happy Meals. They're sitting at the table. I says, don't take your eyes off of Grandpa. Just stay. You're not going to leave my eyesight. Just stay right there. And I got back in line. Just stay right there, like my dog. Just stay right there, okay? I see you. And then I brought him some ice cream. Here's some ice cream for you. And I go, do you know why you're having this ice cream? And my little granddaughter says, because you get to give it to us. And I was thinking, no, you finished your Happy Meal. But you're more spiritual than I am. That's exactly right, dear. I was like, you finished your Happy Meal. That was a good job. But she caught it. That was pretty good. She was pretty good. And here's what I want you to know. God has just lavished us with so much grace. I get to be a dad. I get to go to work. I get to love my family. I get to serve you people. I get to. It's awesome. It's awesome. So let me close. I talked about this one other time about when I was a boy, the only thing that mattered to me was playing baseball. That's the only thing that mattered to me. I used to sleep with my ball glove and a ball in it in my bed. And when I got to age to play Little League was, back where I live, it was 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds all on the same team. And you were allowed to have X amount of 12, X amount of 11, a few 10s, and 1 or 2 9-year-olds. And so I tried out. Back then, you tried out for a team, and I tried out for the Reds. They were the premier team in my town. And Mr. Zelli was the manager. And Mr. Zelli had big trials, big players. And then when I was 9 years old, Mr. Zelli cut me. I wasn't good enough to be on a team at 9 years old. And he did it with a lot of grace. He put his arm around me and walked me all by myself. He didn't tell me in front of the team. He says, Carl, you're a good ball player. You're good. You're good. He says, you just need a little practice on a few things. And so next year, when it comes to tryouts, I'm going to draft you for the Reds as a 10-year-old. I'm going to draft you because you just need a little practice, and in the minor leagues, you'll get it, and then I'll draft you, and then you come on my team when you're 10. And I thought, wow, okay. And Mr. Zelli was true to his word. He drafted me when I was 10 years old. And there were tryouts. Big players were playing, and there's only a few slots for each age group, and I was trying hard, and one time I screwed up, and Mr. Zelli pulled me aside. He says, Carl, let me tell you a secret. I go, what? He goes, you're trying too hard. He said, you already made the team. I go, what? He goes, I've already got you on as a 10-year-old. You made the team. You don't have to try so hard. You're on the team. I got a uniform reserved for you. Don't tell anybody, but you're on the team. Really? Uh-huh. I went back out to the inter-squad game like Hercules. Playing center field. A ball was hit to me. I scooped it up. There was a runner on second base. I saw him rounding third trying to go home, and I said, I've already made the team. Doesn't matter. And so I whipped the ball home. Boom! The ball went on a fly from center field, and the catcher caught it on a fly. Boom! The coaches went, can you do that all the time? I go, probably. And Mr. Zelli, half the games I played outfield, and half the games I pitched for the Reds as a pitcher because my arm was so strong. And I just played better. I played terrible when I didn't know when I was on the team. But once I played not for acceptance, but from acceptance, you couldn't stop me. Are y'all with me? I was playing from acceptance. Here's what God's grace says. I accept you. I accept you. I'm going to draft you on my team. You don't have to work hard. You don't have to try hard. You don't have to practice all these hours. You don't have to do all that stuff. I've accepted you on my team. And now by faith, all you have to do is accept my acceptance, and you're on the team. And then when we get it, we live from a place from acceptance, not for acceptance. Here's my challenge to every one of you. This morning is to accept the awesome, incredible, lavish grace of God. To accept it. To say, God, by faith, I accept your grace in my life. I accept it in my life. I don't have to do anything to please you. I challenge every person here who hasn't received grace to open your heart up this morning to the awesome, lavish, transforming, powerful grace of God. And then once you have his grace, then I dare you, I dare every person in this room to live as big as God's grace wants you to live. Not to live for acceptance, but to live from acceptance. And I dare you to live in the lavish, awesome grace of God and be the man or woman that God wants you to be. Let's stand for prayer. Father, thank you. Thank you this morning for your amazing, incredible, awesome grace. It's by grace that we are saved, not by works. Thank you for that. I pray this morning that everyone here who hasn't been a recipient of grace would say in their heart this morning, I believe that Jesus died on the cross for me to give me the lavish, unbelievable, amazing grace of God. And if no one has done that, Father, I pray today, just in their heart, they would open up their heart to your amazing grace and know that they don't have to do anything to please you. And then, Father, for those of us who are recipients of your grace, I pray that we would live big, knowing that we're on the team, and it's your grace that keeps us on the team, and that we could play and live with boldness and risk and live big, loving, forgiving, serving, challenging, just embracing all that you've given us in life. Father, help us to live big by your grace. For it's in Jesus' name we pray.